Ever, like, actually stop and think about how the stuff you buy gets to you? Like the journey from raw materials to the finished product.
Hmm.
We're diving into that today. Procurement,
Yeah,
the kind of the hidden engine behind the whole global supply chain.
it is.
And it's way more interesting than it sounds, I promise.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. People think it's just buying stuff cheap, but it's actually about making choices, strategic decisions that impact like everything a company does.
It impacts all of us, even in our daily life.
Totally.
Okay, so we've got some really interesting stuff to dig into today. We've got articles about supply chain logistics, like the whole how it works, ethical sourcing, which is a big
Yeah.
one,
Huge.
and even like a peek into the future of procurement. We're talking AI,
Yeah.
blockchain, wild stuff.
It's a lot, and it's changing so fast.
Yeah.
But the goal here is to understand why procurement is so important.
Why it deserves more credit?
Right. Because we're not just talking about buying paper clips here.
No, not at all. So let's get into it. We're not talking about just finding the cheapest thing on Amazon, right?
Right.
So what does it actually mean for procurement to be strategic?
It's about looking at the long game,
Hmm.
right? Not just today's lowest price.
Uh-huh.
Thinking about the entire life of a product or a service
Okay.
and figuring out how those buying decisions, they all line up with the company's goals.
Mm,
Could be, I don't know, reducing their environmental impact,
right.
increasing their profits in the long run.
It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Making choices today that benefit the company for years.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's say you're a company and you sell coffee.
Oh, okay.
Now, you could just buy the cheapest beans possible,
Right.
but that might mean, the quality's not as good.
Yeah.
Or even worse, you might be supporting practices that aren't ethical.
That's a good point.
But strategic procurement would be like, okay, let's find a supplier who shares our company values.
I see.
So maybe they offer fair trade organic beans.
Okay.
Might cost a bit more upfront, but think about it. That impacts your quality, your brand, how loyal your customers are.
It's like that saying, you get what you pay for, right?
Exactly. And all those things,
Hmm.
they contribute to a company's success overall.
Absolutely.
And that's where the idea of total cost of ownership comes in.
PCO, right? I've heard that term thrown around, but break it down for me.
So it's looking at what something really costs over its whole life,
Mm.
not just that initial price tag.
Okay.
Like think about buying a printer,
Yeah.
right? You might see a super cheap one,
Yeah.
but then it breaks all the time.
Yeah.
Or the ink cartridges are ridiculously expensive.
Ugh, the worst.
Procurement pros, they factor in all that
The
stuff.
hidden costs.
Yep. Maintenance, how you get rid of it eventually, even how much energy it uses.
Wow.
Sometimes spending more upfront actually saves you tons of money and headaches in the long run.
It's like investing in good shoes. You know?
Yeah.
Spend a little more, they last longer, you're not constantly replacing cheap ones. It's crazy how many of those hidden costs we just, like, never think about.
Right. And for companies, those savings
Yeah.
or those extra costs, they can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's not even just about saving money.
It's not.
Procurement, it's a strategic way to stand out in the market too. Like it builds your competitive edge.
Okay, now that is fascinating to me. How does that work?
All right, imagine a company. They want to be known for eco-friendly products.
Right.
Right? Sustainable, all that.
Yeah.
Their procurement team, they're the ones finding suppliers who fit those values.
So it's not just like, give us the materials. It's got to be how those materials got there in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could be recycled stuff, even if it's harder to find or costs a bit more.
Yeah.
They're investing in a whole supply chain that matches their image.
Which then obviously appeals to customers who care about that stuff too.
Totally. Or think about tech, right? A company needs a part for their new gadget.
Uh-huh.
They could use a generic one everyone else has.
Right.
Or they push their procurement team to be like, find us someone who can make a custom solution,
Yeah.
something unique that gives them an advantage.
So procurement's not just keeping things running, it's pushing things forward.
It drives innovation. And speaking of keeping things running, we got to talk about the human side of all this. Because it's not just spreadsheets.
Okay, now this I'm really curious about. When I picture procurement, I'm picturing someone glued to their computer.
Right.
Not exactly the social butterfly of the business world.
Well, relationships are huge in this field. Like one of the most crucial things is building those strong connections with suppliers.
So it's deeper than just like send me 10,000 widgets by Tuesday.
Totally. It goes beyond the transaction. You want partnerships.
Built on trust, I imagine.
Yeah. Understanding each other's needs. Because think about it. A good relationship can make or break you, especially if there's some kind of crisis.
Like, oh, I don't know, a global pandemic throws everything off.
Exactly. Or a natural disaster messes with supply chains. That strong relationship, that can be a lifeline. A good supplier will go above and beyond to help you through that.
Whereas if you've just been hammering them for the absolute lowest price every time,
They might not be so eager to prioritize you, right?
you get what you give. Loyalty is a two-way street.
100%. And that's where procurement's role in managing risk comes in.
Okay, risk management. Sounds kind of intense. Like, I need a disaster preparedness kit just to hear about it.
It's not that bad. It's just thinking ahead. What could go wrong?
Mhm.
And having a plan to deal with it if it does. One big part is diversifying your supply chain.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Classic advice.
Right. So instead of needing one supplier for a vital thing, you've got multiples.
Spread out, I assume, so if one region has a problem.
You've got backups.
Hmm.
Makes your supply chain way more resilient, able to handle the unexpected.
Smart.
And it's not just that. Procurement teams are getting super high-tech with this stuff, using data to predict problems.
Like, what kind of data are we talking? Give me an example.
Okay, let's say your company relies on a specific raw material, right? Teams can use data to track weather patterns, even political stuff happening in the world, economic indicators, all to predict if that material supply might get interrupted.
So if there's going to be a drought where they get that material, they know that ahead of time.
Exactly. They can find other sources, be ready before it becomes a crisis.
That's some next level thinking.
Predictive risk management, that's what we call it.
Okay, that does sound kind of sci-fi. Like, are we predicting crimes before they happen, but for supply chains?
Uh-huh. Not quite.
Mm-hmm.
But it is about using data to be prepared.
So you're looking at what's happened in the past, what's going on right now, and then using that to make educated guesses about the future.
And adjustments. You got to be able to shift gears quickly, which honestly, in the world today, that's more important than ever.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. With all this data, all this tech,
Yeah.
where do people fit in? Are we going to have robots doing all our procurement soon?
Are we all going to be out of a job soon? Robots taking over procurement?
Nah, not that extreme. Technology is definitely changing things up, but we still need humans in the loop. Big time. It's like, think of it this way.
Okay.
Tech gives us the tools, right? All that data, the analysis.
Yeah.
But it's still people, the procurement pros, who actually understand what it means.
They make the judgment calls.
Exactly. And they build those relationships we were just talking about. You can't automate that.
True, true. Speaking of tech, though, we got to talk about the really futuristic stuff happening in procurement.
Oh,
AI, for one, and blockchain. Those are buzzwords we hear everywhere these days.
for good reason. They're huge.
So let's start with AI, artificial intelligence. Paint me a picture. How's it changing the game for procurement teams?
Think of AI like having a super-powered assistant,
Mhm.
right? One that can analyze tons of data crazy fast.
Okay, I like the sound of that already. Less time with spreadsheets.
Way less. It can find you the perfect suppliers based on all kinds of things.
Like what? Give me an example.
Could be their sustainability practices, how good they are at hitting deadlines, really specific stuff. Helps you make smarter decisions way faster.
So instead of like manually comparing 20 different companies,
AI's already done it. You can focus on the bigger strategy, negotiating contracts, building those relationships, the stuff humans are good at.
makes sense.
Plus, it can do things like optimize your inventory, even predict if prices are going to go up or down. Automates the boring tasks nobody wants to do anyway.
More time for the interesting stuff.
Exactly. Okay, now blockchain. This one's a little trickier to wrap your head around.
I was going to say, I've heard of it, but mostly with like cryptocurrency stuff. Not sure how it helps me buy, I don't know, office supplies.
It's got broader uses than that. Imagine you've got a digital record of every single step in a product's life. From the moment those raw materials are dug out of the ground
Okay.
to when it's sitting on a shelf ready to be sold, blockchain lets companies track that whole journey. Super transparent, super secure.
So like if I buy, say, coffee beans, I could see what farm they came from, how much the farmers were paid, even if the transportation was eco-friendly.
All of that. It's a level of knowing where your stuff came from that we've never had before.
Wow.
Plus, blockchain's really hard to mess with, security-wise.
So less fraud, less chance of getting fake stuff.
Exactly. That's huge for industries with really valuable or, sensitive goods.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in system for keeping things honest.
That is pretty amazing. But even with all this cool tech making things easier,
Yeah.
there's got to still be challenges in procurement, right? The world's a messy place.
Oh, for sure. Just keeping up with how fast things change, the tech itself, that's a job.
Procurement pros have got to be learning constantly.
Lifelong learners, yep. And then there's always going to be supply chain disruptions.
The pandemic really showed us how vulnerable things are.
Exactly. Procurement teams got to be able to pivot, change plans fast, keep those supplies moving no matter what's happening in the world.
That is a seriously important job. You're like the behind-the-scenes heroes of, well, everything we use, really.
There's definitely satisfaction in knowing you're keeping things running. And honestly, the challenges, they make it more interesting. Procurement's only going to get more important, more strategic.
Driving innovation, making sure things are ethical, building supply chains that can weather any storm.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, there you have it, listener. Our deep dive into the world of procurement. It's way more than just buying stuff. It's about making smart choices that impact all of us. Thanks for exploring with us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.